Rashid asks, hi, does Jungle Scout give the supplier information? Trying to understand the question. We do have the supplier database, if that's the tool that you're referring to. And with the supplier database, you can find the supplier for a particular type of product or dig deeper into a supplier. That information is provided by the U.S. Customs. Any information that is provided for imports, then of course through the Freedom of Information Act, we're able to access those manifests and kind of determine who the different suppliers are, and provide that information for you all so that you all can use that in vetting your suppliers or finding out, like we like to say, your top competitors, find out who they get their products from. So that's how we receive the information. We don't share any information, obviously, that we receive internally to externally. I don't know if that makes any sense, but hopefully that answers your question there, Rashid.
Yeah, just to add on to that, in case this is what you're getting at, you can't find suppliers directly through Jungle Scout. So we definitely help with product research and helping you find product ideas, but within our interface, you can't necessarily pick and contact and do the whole process of contacting and so on suppliers through Jungle Scout. You would be best off using somewhere like Alibaba or Global Sources, or finding suppliers directly. What we do have that Rolando was just speaking about, the supplier database, is just is a database of suppliers that have worked with sort of US clients before, or US companies. So it is one resource to find potential suppliers, but it's not, so it's one resource that can help you find or verify suppliers, but it's not, something that you can contact them directly through Jungle Scout, if that makes sense. It gives you the information, then you can go find them on their own website or Alibaba or somewhere else. So hopefully that makes sense.
Awesome. Danielle has the next question.
Cool.
She's asking, having a hard time finding products, any tips? Yeah, one of the tips that I like to give is definitely, I like to work backwards. So what I'll do is, a lot of times when you're going through and you enter your search criteria, then of course you're going to have this long list of results, and typically you've sorted based on the ranking and sales volume and so on. So what's going to happen is it's like an A to Z, and you're sorting like by the top grossing product. And I just like to flip it and adjust. It's almost like Z to A, and then because then I'm kind of the competition kind of lessens out, right? It's not as competitive because everybody's starting A to Z. So I like to just kind of flip the script and do those kinds of maneuvers to do product research. In addition to that, once I find a product that seems fairly lucrative, and I've crunched a little bit of numbers, it makes sense, and then I find the top seller for that product, I may go in and just kind of spy on them and see what they are selling in their store in addition to that product. Because more than likely, if they've had success with one product, they're going to have success with multiple products. And so then I'll run the Chrome extension directly on their store and kind of find some more results. And the way you do that is when you're at the listing, you're on Amazon.com and you're in their listing, you'll see the name or the brand. And if you click on the brand, then you'll start to see everything that particular seller sells. And it's just it's a good little hack to kind of find some additional. Of course, you gotta go in and vet it through Jungle Scout and vet it through the Chrome extension. Do your due diligence always, but that's kind of just to kind of get the creative juices flowing. I tend to do that as well. Any tips that you may have, Lenny?
Yeah, maybe a couple of tips I'd say is just to experiment with the filters inside of Jungle Scout. So there's, we often talk about, let's say, you want high demand, low competition, which is, relevant most of the, which is definitely very relevant. We'd often talk about, say, a price point of at least $18 or $20 up to maybe $60 or $70, which is a great price point, but it's not the only way. You could play with some other filters. So, for example, things that I've tried in the past, I've kept my sales high, at least 300 or 400 sales per month. But then instead of a price point starting at say $18 or $20, I've looked at price points between say $10 to $15 or those $10 to $12 to see what's selling really well at that lower price point. But what I'm keeping in mind is, or what I'm looking for specifically, is maybe a product that has the potential to be bundled, or you could maybe sell a 2 or a 5-pack, or looking for something that maybe not other people are looking for because it's lower than the price point that we often talk about, but maybe there's an opportunity there to bundle it with another product and get it over that $18, $20 mark. So that's like one way that you could kind of bend the filters a little bit. Other times I like to look at higher price products. So looking at least $30 to $30 to $100 and seeing, what higher price products are out there that also have high demand. And then the higher you go, you may not need as many sales, maybe under, maybe 200 to 300 sales at a higher price point could be a good opportunity. Typically there's less people selling these higher price products because they take a lot more capital up front. So it costs more, whereas maybe for like $3,000, you might be able to get started with a sort of a $20-ish product. If you're trying to sell something that's, $40, $50 and higher, then you might be needing to start with $8,000 or $10,000, for example. So it costs more to get into that area, but there's less competition. So there's sort of pros and cons to all of this. And one thing that I often talk about is you're very rarely going to find a perfect product that has everything. It's got really high sales, really low competition. It has the perfect price point, really high profit margin. You can get it really cheap from a supplier. The supplier has perfect communication and so on. It's not very seasonal. It's very hard to find something that ticks all the boxes. Usually you'll have a handful of products and they'll have strengths. Like this one might have so much demand, but the competition's a little bit high. This product over here might have very low competition, but maybe it costs a lot more to get started. So you'll generally find that, you'll have a number of products and they won't tick all the boxes, but you just have to kind of weigh them up and find the product that ticks the most boxes, or the one that you feel better about. So I just want to take away the pressure of feeling like you have to tick every box that we say is something to look for. That's I guess more just my mindset when I'm looking for products. Hopefully something in there helps.
Well, that was awesome. Good job and great tips. Looks like Nam has the next question. And they're asking, what is the best way to get the bootcamp course started? Are there any homework or classes? Classes assignment? And how do we have face-to-face interactions? So the best way, so one thing that we're huge advocates of is don't fall into analysis paralysis, right? Like you definitely want to hit the ground running. And so my tips on how to get started with Freedom Builder Bootcamp is, just start where at the very beginning, where like when you first enter the course, it says start here, and always look at the description box, because there might be some external links that you can use of additional tips. But just go through the video. Greg does an excellent job at walking you step by step on, on how to launch your first product. So as you're going through the videos, he's going to just follow along, do it exactly as he's doing. And so that's essentially the most effective way. I know that some people will try to like binge like a Netflix series, the entire course. But I prefer to, as I'm going to take the actions that Greg is taking, do the product research alongside with him, and do the, and those would be the homework assignments, right? Just kind of following along as he's doing, and following those motions. In addition to that, you're gonna run into snags, you're gonna run into, questions. Take full advantage of these weekly live coaching calls. And of course, the Facebook group, just dropping your question immediately. Then you don't have to wait the entire week. So, take full advantage of the group and these weekly coaching calls, have your questions lined up. And I think if there's any additional things that I would add to that, I wouldn't try to focus too much on searching out through different channels, like for example, like going on YouTube and trying to find additional information on related to like product research and so on. I would just stick to the course itself, exactly what Greg lays out. There's actually some bonus content for product research. I would definitely go through that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that would be all that I have for now. We don't have any face-to-face interaction. This is our way to kind of be able to answer any of your questions directly and almost face-to-face, face-to-chat. So, yeah.
Yeah, just in case, because I can see that you're fairly new to the group, Enam. So welcome first up. But yeah, in terms of the face-to-face interaction or the live interaction, that's what we're doing here at the moment. And keep in mind that we're here every week to answer your questions live. So yeah, keep this time on the calendar, and this is your opportunity to get answers live. All right, so the next question is from Rashid, who asks, do you prefer DDP shipping or having a freight company from Freightos, or any other advice for shipping, please? Yeah, I don't feel like I'm the most qualified to give shipping advice. I've done a few different things. I don't know that I'm someone that can say that like this is the best way to go about it. I've used Freightos before, and I know Rolando's like quite familiar with them for a number of the Jungle Creations products, and they are really great. They can tend to be a little bit more expensive, I believe, than some other freight forwarders, but they make up for that in terms of ease of use, and they've got some really cool technology where you can see on a map where your shipment is, so it gives you peace of mind. And I think they've got like great customer service, and so it's a great experience, and it makes it very easy for you, which I think is why a lot of people are attracted to them. But if you're just looking for the cheapest quote, then yeah, definitely definitely go to, oh wait, did I get that mixed up? I was thinking of Flexport, sorry. I was mentioning Flexport as a specific freight forwarder. Yeah, they're the ones that I was mentioning, a little bit higher price, but really great experience. Or Freightos is the site to go to get a bunch of different quotes, and you can select the cheapest one. So I definitely would recommend Freightos, even if you don't go with any of them, and at least gives you like an idea of sort of the market price for shipping and how much to expect. Or, when you see a lot of quotes, there'll probably be some outliers that are really cheap and some that are really expensive that you'd probably eliminate those. And then you've got a good idea in the middle there what the average price is that you should be paying. In terms of like DDP, I've tried it. I've used DDP twice now, only very recently. I don't have a verdict as to whether I prefer that versus some of the other different types, but I liked DDP because it was sort of all inclusive. I didn't have to worry about duties or anything like that. But I think it is a little bit more expensive than some other types. So I've used it, but I don't really have a solid opinion on it yet. As I said, I'm not really a shipping expert. I don't know if you've got anything else to add, Rolando.
Yeah, I prefer FOB. I believe that's been what I've used. There is really no right or wrong. What's going to happen is your supplier is going to give you the options that work best for them, and I think that's, and then they can work with you in terms of pricing as well, and you can kind of compare the pricing. FOB essentially free on board. What that means is the supplier is going to get it all the way to the port, the closest port, and then your freight forwarder takes over from there and ships it over to and gets it through customs. So it's basically depending on the intercoms that you select, it's going to be who handles what in the process, right? So who's going to get it from the factory over to the port, and then from the port, who's going to get it across into the United States, and then from the United States, who's going to ship it. So there's multiple options, and I think what it really comes down to is having all the options available to you, provided by your supplier, and weigh them out. I prefer to have the freight forwarder handle from the port of the origin country, the country of origin, just because I'm going to encounter fewer problems, right? They're going to make it a little more smoother, a little more seamless, and they could just take on any challenges that might come along, right? At the customs and so on, because it could become a nightmare as to what the outcomes could be if you start using like the supplier to ship it to the United States and so on. So yeah, I prefer FOB, and Lenny prefers DDP. So that's why there's no right or wrong answer to this. Just weigh it out in terms of what your ultimate goal is, and find what's best. All right, looks like
Oh, nicely said.
has the next question. What do you mean coaching calls? So basically, this is live. This is real time. It's like you have us on the phone, right? But actually, you could see us. So that's why we call it a coaching call. The Zoom, we're conducting this through Zoom. So as you're dropping in your questions, we're answering them in real time. So that's what we mean by a coaching call, and they happen every Thursday. We used to have a monthly cadence, but as a result of all of y'all's feedback, it sounded like you were all more interested in having weekly versus a monthly cadence, and so we can answer your questions all the more often. Oh, you're welcome, Inam. So we're here to answer any and all of your questions. Rashid, you're welcome as well. Do y'all have any other questions? Feel free to drop them in. So we're at the tail end of questions now. Good questions, though, everyone. We got a question from Rashid. Do you prefer having N application with the supplier at the beginner to try a new product? If I follow too well, Lynn, do you happen to understand the question?
I'm doing a quick Google search. I'm not familiar with an NNN application. I'm assuming it's some sort of non-disclosure type application, or non-disclosure type agreement is what I'm assuming you're referring to here. We do cover that in the course. Greg does talk through the best practices that he recommends, and that that both Rolando and I really like as well, where you do put a agreement in place with your supplier, and you be very, very clear up front on what is expected of them and of you. So it's, very, very clear. It's in paper form, exactly what you're getting with the product, what's included, and the lead time, sort of the maximum lead time that your supplier is agreeing to. And then you can throw in some additional clauses. And these are things that you perhaps might go back and forth a little bit. But, one of the things that Greg talks about is, putting in something to say that if they go over, if they go past a certain date or past, 45 or 60 days, then, for every day or every week that they go over, they need to give you a 5% discount or something to that effect. Essentially just putting some things in place to hold them accountable, to make sure that they know that, your order is urgent and that they keep you front of mind. Now, some suppliers might push back a little bit, and you might just need to negotiate what terms are the most fair for both parties. But at the very least, just having something written down in that sort of agreement form is really, really helpful. Now, in terms of if something was to go drastically wrong, which to be honest, I haven't heard too many stories of anything too crazy happening, but in that event, would this agreement really be able to help you legally? It probably not. Like the amount it would cost to try to take it to court or hire lawyers and so on to kind of fight it would probably outweigh the cost of the products and so on. So it's, in terms of, legally it may not help you lots, but what we've found is that just by having it in place does a lot of the work. It gives you a lot of benefit just in terms of keeping everything very clear between you and your supplier, without it having to escalate to anything legal, if that makes sense. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. I don't know if I'm talking about something completely different here, but hopefully that has shares some insight.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we do have a template. What I'll do is I'll drop it in the comments. It's as you're going through the supplier outreach and drawing up the contract. We do have a contract per se that you can use, and it kind of covers these topics that Lenny's talking about of what you want to convey and what type of protections you're trying to put in. But once again, we're dealing if we're dealing with a supplier that's in China, there's not a whole lot of enforcement that we can do when it comes to a contract. But one of the things that, if you understand the Chinese culture, and Greg does dive into this in module, let me look at it real quick here. Module, ooh, I just had that. Module 3. In Module 3, Lesson 6, it says understanding Chinese culture. I would definitely take a moment to read that. A lot of it comes down to them trying to what we call save face. So a lot of suppliers are, they take it to heart, like their commitment. Like once you make a deal with them, they own that, and so that's why. These contracts, even though they're not as enforceable, definitely to save face and not ruin their reputation as a company at large, they will go above and beyond to help you out. So definitely take a look at that lesson. And like I said, I'll drop a link on the contract, the purchase order contract, so that you can have that for yourself. All right. Anam asks, I will have more questions for the next coaching call. Unfortunately, at work at the moment. Oh, gotcha. Now, something to keep in mind, is that the coaching calls, they're put on earlier in the week. I try to get the watch or the event up on Monday, and so you can begin to put your questions all throughout the week until Thursday. We go live. And we'll answer those questions first. So feel free to start just dropping your questions in there. If something comes to mind, and then come Thursday, we'll hop on, we'll have our cup of coffee in hand, and we'll just start answering those questions. So yeah, definitely. And then you'll always be able to access these. They remain on in the Facebook group under the announcements tab. So you could always reference these videos, and they're always going to be there. We also upload them to the Freedom Builder Bootcamp course. So just keep in mind that there's always the ability to see something that was recorded in the past.
Cool. I see there's a...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it looks like there's a question here from Brett who says, ordered my first product, used DDP from the supplier. Supplier says it shipped on the 24th of May. I received an email from Alibaba Trade Assurance that the product shipped on 17th of June. Do you have an experience with Trade Assurance? Are they just slow in sending the email out, or did it really take that long to get from the supplier to the ship? The supplier has not been very helpful. All they say is that it left the factory on the 24th. Yeah, this is a good question. Basically, what could have happened here is that, Alibaba doesn't really know when these events happen until either you or the supplier, I think, mark them on, basically just mark it on the website. Is standing. So it's possible that they just never updated it. I'm just checking, my AirPod died, so you can still hear me, Rolando?
You're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's possible that Alibaba just didn't, that the supplier didn't mark it as sent on the platform until the 17th. So yeah, it might have actually been sent out on the 24th, like your supplier had said. Ultimately, that is a little bit of the downside of working with your supplier on shipping. And I've found this a lot as well. I've typically just gone with my supplier quite a lot in the past for shipping, and it's basically always worked out, but there's just always a lot of just not knowing where things are. So for instance, there's this last shipment of the washable pee pads that I got sent in. It seemed to take an extraordinarily long time, which I now understand is kind of across the board, but I had no tracking number. I kept asking my supplier, like, okay, do you have a tracking number? Because I needed to input that into Seller Central. And they were saying like, oh no, there's no tracking number because it's going by truck or something. I didn't really understand why it didn't have a tracking number, but I just had to trust and just sort of wait. And eventually it arrived. So moving forward, I am going to shift a lot more shipments into using a freight forwarder, even if it costs a little bit more, because you just end up, it's just better communication. You know where your shipment is at, and you have more, like you have direct contact with where who's shipping your goods versus talking to your supplier as the middleman and then them talking to their freight forwarder. So I know that maybe doesn't answer your question necessarily, other than the fact that it is fairly common when using your supplier to just not have much clarity over where your shipment is. Because I've experienced the same thing. But yeah, hopefully my experience helps you understand that it, unfortunately, it can be fairly common for that kind of thing to happen. But yeah, I'd be asking to see if they've got a tracking number. If you can get any sort of tracking number, then you can at least be checking for yourself where the shipment is and how long it's going to take and the expected delivery date and all that sort of thing. And let's see, the price from the supplier for DDP was much better than FOB and using a freight forwarder. Yeah, and that's personally why a lot of the time I've also just gone with my supplier, because I've compared that to a freight forwarder FOB price, and it often has been cheaper doing it that way. But yeah, I've had the last few shipping experiences I've had, I've just had a lot of unknowns and not very good communication. So I think I'd be willing now to kind of eat that extra cost to just
every time I have a shipment, I just know that I can talk to someone about it, and I know that I can get information on it all the time. So as Rolando mentioned earlier, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I would say that using a freight forwarder is like the most straightforward and just gives you the most peace of mind. But ultimately, you know, you're also running a business and you got to make ends meet. So you kind of need to weigh up whether price is most important or sort of that peace of mind and smoothness.
Yeah, and just adding to that, what each of the Incoterms has its pro and its cons. So that's kind of what you have to weigh out and determine which option would work best given your financial situation and given your timeline. I will say also, here's another challenge, just kind of going back to your earlier question, Brett. There is major congestions in the ports. So it could be that your product is sitting at the port and it hasn't been scheduled to be put on ship. So there could be those types of gaps as well. Right now, shipping is very delayed, which is why Lenny early on said that start planning for Black Friday and the holiday season now, just because we don't see this smoothing out anytime soon. Amazon just had its Prime Week, and so I'm sure that there's just a lot of sellers and brands and so forth that are trying to get their product imported into the United States. So that's why I say definitely start planning now and expect delays, plan for delays, and that's definitely something that you'll need to factor in.
Yeah, I'd also say real quick that I'm in the habit of, as soon as I've made a final payment for an order or even a sample, that kind of thing, I kind of keep at my suppliers for like a couple of days, asking them, when they're going to send it out, when can they send me tracking numbers, or like kind of getting on their back about it if you choose to use your supplier, because I often do find that they usually take a few days after you've made the payment before it actually leaves. I mean, maybe there is, maybe that's just the way it has to be, but I like to kind of keep on their back to make sure that they have sent it. Yeah, because I think in the past I've made a payment to them and go, okay, I paid the balance now, and I haven't followed up, and then it actually hasn't been sent out for another few days or nearly a week. So I like to keep on their back about it, which I guess just comes back to overall this whole process, just, constant communication. Even if you can just carve out 10, 15 minutes a day, just send an email, just keep in touch, and with whether it's your supply or freight forwarder, just make sure you're always keeping in constant communication so that you can always be clear on where everything's at.
Awesome. Looks like Anam has the next question, asking if I don't like the packaging, in this case a polymailer. My product came in from my supplier. How can I customize my polymailer for my product? And who should I use to get the polymailer from? So definitely your supplier, if they are if they're not like a trade company and they are a legitimate manufacturer of products, they tend to have the different options available to you. And that's who you really want to work with, because they can give you the best pricing. If you start having to have your packaging shipped, made somewhere else, and then shipped over to the supplier that you decided to work with, then it can become, a logistical nightmare, right? Potentially. So that's why it's always best to use the supplier to create whatever packaging you like, and they should be able to accommodate anything. As long as they're always, everything comes with a cost the more you upgrade. So if you wanted if you went from a poly bag to a box, of course, that's going to be an upgrade. And then depending on how many colors you use on the packaging, that's an upgrade. Probably the cheapest way to do it is if you just use plain black and white or actually just one tone color, so black on a if it's a box, for example, black on a box, it'll stand out. It'll you can visually you could put whatever you want on there, and then if you start adding additional colors, that's an additional cost. So yes, definitely always use the supplier. I think that would cover, yeah, because they would customize the poly mailer as well if you wanted to. Probably one thing that you could do too is put an insert in the poly mailer, and that's usually very affordable option as well, like a label that slides right into the packaging, or have some stickers put onto the poly mailer. Those are different options that you could do if you want to stick with a poly mailer.
Yeah, I'd say probably some kind of getting them to design a sticker would probably be the easiest, most elegant solution. I'm not really sure. I don't know that there's too much you can do with a poly mailer other than, kind of putting a sticker on, or maybe you could get some different colors, perhaps like a color that might be more closely related to your brand and maybe a sticker. I don't know whether they can, I'm assuming they probably can print on poly mailers as well. But again, like Rolando said, everything sort of comes with a cost. But yeah, definitely just ask your supplier what are all the options they have, or, be very specific about like, this is, can you print on a poly mailer? Can you get this size poly mailer? But just be very direct with asking exactly what you want, and they'll be able to tell you whether they can do it or not. Actually, Rolando has a great example of needing to do this quite recently with our jungle sticks, as we were having some issues with, they were coming in sort of like a bag, plastic kind of bag, and we're having some issues with shipping and needed more protection. And so you got the same supplier to change that to the, I can't remember the tubes, right, Rolando?
Yeah, so in coordination with the supplier for the jungle sticks, I just asked if they could actually create a box, or if they have boxes that would fit the actual product in it. So it would still be in the plastic as a protection, so it doesn't get exposed to like the elements, right? But that in itself can't be shipped because it could easily tear, and it wouldn't be a good user experience for a customer on the receiving end. These are marshmallow roasting sticks. You don't want them to be all dirty and mangled. So a box is the best form of protection. And I asked if they could accommodate for that. And, they've never done it, but they made it happen. They were like, yeah, I think we could pull that off. And then they just kind of sent me a sample, and it was perfect. It was a great alternative. And going forward, that's the way the jungle sticks will be delivered, in a box format. So it was an additional. It was an additional, I think, 60 cents to get the box, but well worth it, because now we could ship and to in anywhere and not run into any problems of the product getting damaged. So and there's a good margin there that like allows us to do that. So first check to see if you're still profitable. Don't upgrade too much if it really eats away at your profit margin. That could be version 2.0. The goal is to launch, definitely launch with your branding on the poly mailer, or your branding on the product itself. But if getting it in a box, for example, just kind of eats away at the profit, then you could do that down the road, and there's no rush. But get all your options that are available to you. They'll usually put in a little spreadsheet and say, like, this is a poly mailer. This is if it comes in a box. This is a custom box. This is, they'll give you all the options and the costs for each one.
All righty. Unless I'm missing something, I think we've come to the end of our questions.
Yeah, it looks like it is. Yeah.
Cool.
Great questions, everyone. And I guess we're at the tail end, huh, Lenny?
Yeah, looks like it. Well, yeah, it's been great. Hopefully we've given you guys some value today. Again, make sure to tune in next week. Drop your questions here in the group. And yeah, wishing everyone a great rest of your week.
Thank you, and keep crushing it, Freedom Builders.
Take care, everyone.